Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Rose and Rubini podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chavla, and as always, I'm really pleased to be joined by CEO and Head of Research, Brunello Rosa. Brunello, this week we're talking about the much-awaited Trump-Xi meeting in Korea. Was it a G2 or a Yalta 2.0? A very interesting framing, two very different kinds of international summits. Well, this much-awaited summit happened in Busan in South Korea.
Hmm.
Two heads of state met face to face for the first time in 6 years. Coming as sort of amongst the massive tensions, what you've called Cold War 2.0. Um,
Hmm.
what were the key outcomes of this meeting, Brunello?
So, as we discussed many times in the past, this was kind of a absolutely pivotal meeting to be had for the two superpowers to at least try to find some common ground on the most pressing issues. And I think to some extent they reached that goal. At least on the surface, they kind of made an agreement on a few points. First of all, China committed to restart some large-scale buying of soybeans from the US, and we know how that is important for the base of Donald Trump, that is very much in the red states,
Mm.
of where farmers are an important constituency. So I think that was mission accomplished. The second one, of course, is on fentanyl. We know that Trump accuses China to effectively drugging the West Coast, making them uh, unfit for work at the very least, if not just a healthcare emergency. And also on that, China made some commitments on curbing the export of some of the precursors in chemicals to produce the fentanyl. And of course, the third thing is rare earths that we know how damaging it was for the US having China having put a sort of increased export control. And so that has been extended a sort of exemption for about 8 years. So that helps finding more solution, no more fronts. What China got in return is like a reduction in tariffs from 57 to 47%, and the idea of avoiding the 100% tax that was threatened by Trump when China introduced this curb on rare earths export. Plus, and this is more probably the theatrical side of things, there might be a state visit by each president to each other in 2026. So he in the US and Trump in China. We'll see whether that occurs or not, but I think these initial points were way more important than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Who would you say, if you had to pick, was sort of a clear winner of this round of talks? And to answer the question posed in the article, I mean, was this really a G2 the way that Trump posted on Truth Social that it was?
Well, of course, Trump is always the winner by definition, right? So even when he loses massively, he likes to portray himself as the real winner. He said this was like a 12 out of 10 meeting. I mean, it's usually exaggerated a bit. He says, in my G2 meeting with Xi Jinping, we agreed this, and that, and, God save or God bless
Hmm.
US, China, and all the rest of it, right? But the reality is probably a bit more complicated than that. Most independent observers believe that actually the winner was Xi Jinping. He knew that he had a real leverage to play, and that was the rare earth export. That actually allow U.S. weapons to operate. So if you consider the U.S. Army is a kind of the foundation of the U.S. domination on so many other things, including financial, knowing that this foundation is based on Chinese will, is kind of a bit contradictory. The other thing is that you saw that she never budged, never came cap in hand at the White House begging for reduced tariff like everybody else had to do around the world. Stayed in Beijing, did the move, refused to negotiate. he obtained the first truce in Geneva in May after the April 2nd announcements. In this case, then he relaunched the threat, and then Trump had to admit in several occasions that Xi Jinping is a tough negotiator. He had to go all the way to Korea, so basically almost in Beijing, to make an agreement. So, Xi
Mm.
Jinping kind of, by all independent observers, looked like the clear winner. Also because by calling a G2, it's like putting China at the same level of the US, while so far, even in the Graham Allison description of things in his book Destined for War, you know, US was the incumbent power and China was the challenging power and rising power. So they were not at the same level. Why G2
Mm.
means they are there. So I think the clear winner is Xi Jinping.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What's the significance of Yalta 2.0? How could this be seen as Yalta 2.0 type of conference?
So the Yalta 2.0 will be we discussed during the summer potentially a first meeting between Xi Jinping, Putin, and Trump could have happened on the sidelines of the celebrations of the 80th anniversary of the victory in World War II by China over Japan, where many world leaders came, especially from the autocratic side of the world. Um, and just before that, on the 15th of August, Trump and Putin met in Alaska, as we know. It seems like in a preparatory phase for that. But what has happened, if you think about, you got the meeting in August between Trump and Putin, the meeting in October between Trump and Xi Jinping. So we have two bilateral meetings. The question is, will it ever become a trilateral meeting between the three? And that would be the format of the Yalta 2.0, in which the three leaders kind of decide to divide the world in spheres of influence. And this would be the time for Trump to formalize that the
Mm.
US cannot continue defending some of his um, uh, uh, current territories, and he has to give up some of them, but as part of a much broader plan rather than just as a sign of weakness.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's very interesting how we went from, a G20 to a G8 to a G7 to now potentially a G2. It seems like as all the experts agree, we're moving from unipolarity to bipolarity to multipolarity. The framing of the conferences is actually going in the other direction.
Yes.
These companies perhaps try to, overcompensate for the way the world is shifting.
And if I may say, think about it. So far, we had the single leader, the US, and a rising power, China, and a regional power, Russia. In only 2 months, Trump managed to put Russia and China at the same level of the US. Not sure this is a great victory at global level, but
Mm.
historians will judge that, I think. That's Yalta 2.0 would be a big defeat. Already G2 is a big defeat. So is it really the direction where Trump wants to go? I don't know. It seems to me, but it may portray as victory, but in all objective respects, it's probably going to be a defeat. So um, to be seen, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. As always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you. Until next time.